This episode is brought to you by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 164 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, everyone. I'm Gordon Brewer. Glad you've joined me. Hope you're having a good week or weekend whenever you might be listening to this. And as I like to always say, this is your first time joining the podcast. Welcome. I'm glad you're here with me on this journey, and hope you'll come back for more and subscribe to the podcast. I'm so excited about my guest for this particular episode. It's been a while since I've had one of these people on the podcast. She was one of the earliest people I had and was gracious enough to join me, but I've got two of a pair of people that are pretty well known in this whole private practice consulting. And they were some of the earliest private practice consultants out there. But I've got Kelly Higdon and Miranda Palmer joining me for this particular episode from ZynnyMe. And they are probably best known for their business bootcamp that they put together. And I know they've got a lot of other great things that they want to share with you. In this particular episode, we are going to be talking just about money mindset and how I think a lot of times how we think about what we charge, think about how we spend our money, how we do things with our money in general, can get in the way of helping us get ahead in our practices. I think a lot of us can experience some money shame, as I like to call it. But Kelly and Miranda have just spent a lot of time working with other therapists around this issue. So I'm excited for you to hear from them. This is a little bit longer episode, and that's okay. I mean, they have a lot to say, and it's just always good to have these conversations. So anyway, stay tuned for that. Before we get to Kelly and Miranda, I wanted to invite you to go over and check out the Google Workspace for Therapists course. Like I said last time, I'm just having trouble with the name because it's changed. It used to be known as G Suite for Therapists, which was just easier to say, but Google's changed their branding, and it's now G Suite is now called Google Workspace. And one of the things that I've been real excited about is just being able to use those tools in helping you automate more in your practice and being able to use those tools as kind of a practice management platform. It doesn't necessarily replace an electronic health record system like TherapyNotes, which is what I use in my practice and who also are the sponsors of this particular podcast. But you can set up a lot of different tools within Google Workspace to help you in your practice. For example, I came up with a system called the Session Note Helper, and it uses a Google form in conjunction with an add-on called Form Publisher. Now, Form Publisher is a paid add-on, but it's really, when you look at the total cost of it and the return on the investment of it, it is only $79 a year for the add-on, and you get unlimited form conversions. But essentially, with this system, you enter your information on a Google form. You just check off boxes on your screen in terms of telling what you did in a session, and go through that form and fill it out. And you click submit, and it converts it into a narrative in a Google Doc format or a PDF format, depending on how you set it up. But it's a huge time saver in writing session notes with this particular system. It only takes me 5 minutes or less to do a session note. And once you click submit and it generates the new Google Doc that you can either cut or paste into an electronic health record system or any of that, you can edit it more. So if you want to change the wording a little bit, you can. But again, it's a huge time saver. But anyway, I developed that using the Google Workspace platform, and there are tons of other things you can do with that. So a couple of things to check out. One is the Google Workspace for Therapists e-course that I've got available, and I'm in the process of updating it as we go. It's kind of a live update as we go, but I wanted to invite you to go ahead and enroll in that course before the price goes up, because once I get all the updates in place, it's time to change the price. And so the price is going to go up. Right now you can get it for just $98, which is a pretty good deal when it comes to an e-course. I've had a lot of colleagues tell me I don't charge enough for it, but that'll come. But anyway, go ahead and check it out. It's still under the URL of practiceoftherapy.com/G Suite course. But the name of it has changed. It's now Google Workspace. And also you can check out the session note helper. You can find that by just going to practiceoftherapy.com/session note helper. And again, it's not a software, but the session note helper is just essentially what you get with it are the templates that I developed along with the tutorial that shows you how to set it up. It does require some setup, and so you need to have a little bit of tech savvy, not a whole lot, because if I can do it, you can do it. So anyway, you can check that out. So, and also before I get to Kelly and Miranda, I wanted to remind you to check out our sponsor for the podcast, TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers in private practice. They're who I use in my practice, and couldn't do without them. Again, it's one of those essential tools for my practice. And now when you sign up for their service for this particular platform, telehealth is included free. So you get HIPAA compliant telehealth platform with this. And so if you'll go over to therapynotes.com and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get 2 months of their services for free, and you can try them out. They've been wonderful, and their support is second to none. You can actually get in touch with somebody over there. So that's always great. So anyway, check them out. So without further ado, here are my best buds, Kelly and Miranda from ZynnyMe, and you're just going to love hearing them. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And you just don't know how excited I am to have these two rock stars of, I'm just thinking, I'm not worthy.
Stop it.
Of the private practice world of private practice consulting, Kelly Higdon and Miranda Palmer. From ZynnyMe, and they are just so much fun to be with, and I'm so excited for you to be part of this with me in this conversation. So, Kelly, Miranda, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. I mean, and having us here, in this time in particular. And
yes. It's been a tough year, where as we're recording this, we're recording it towards the end of January in 2021. And it's, all of us are still in kind of the COVID days, I think right now. And I know you guys have been noticing some trends and some things, but, as I start with everyone, before we get into our conversation about the M word, I'd like for you all to share a little bit about your private practice journey and how you've kind of landed where you've landed, because you guys have been doing it a while now.
Yeah, I'll start. I actually came to this in kind of a weird way, which was that I failed a licensing exam by 1 point. many years ago. And I was feeling really dejected, and nobody that I'd gone to grad school with was in the studying process yet. And so I got this brilliant idea, like, I'm going to start an online study group because I couldn't find anyone to study with, and started this process. And we all started talking and connecting. And it was so interesting to realize, like, wow, it wasn't just that we were struggling with exams or what study materials to buy. Like, we were really struggling with this whole process between grad school and licensure. And then a couple months later, I get a letter in the mail that says, oh, actually, there's a problem with the exam, you passed. And It was this magical space, but it was also a place where I realized, like, the power of the community. And I really wanted this to keep, to keep being a service to people. And so I continued to share. I didn't realize I was learning how to market. I didn't realize, like, what I was doing. And then as I went through that process and started providing this, like, great container and community for people, eventually, as I started my private practice during the last recession, the Great Recession, people started reaching out and asking me, well, wait, how are you doing that? And how are you doing that private pay? And how is this all working? And can you really charge a fair fee, like, during the recession? Like, what does this look like? And then I started realizing, with all the time I was spending, I needed to charge for my services. So that was the first time I started realizing that. And then I met Kelly, and
Yeah. So then I was working for the county. I actually failed my exam by one point, and it wasn't an accident, and it wasn't or anything like that, which I think is great. So for any of you out there who have failed, you know what? Down the road, it does not matter. Just a reminder of that. But I was kind of miserable in my job, and I was good at it, and I could have stayed and kept climbing, but it's not what I went to school for. I was not doing the work I really wanted to do. I was reviewing charts and all that kind of stuff. So I started a private practice. And I am a type A kind of person. I want to do things right. So I went full force. I got on an insurance panel, and I hated it. Didn't do it right. So then I met Miranda. Actually, I hired Miranda to help me do my practice well, because if I'm going to spend my time outside of work also on this other endeavor, it needed to go well. And this is kind of my last ditch effort in the field. If this wasn't going to work, I was going to go back to school and change my career.
Wow.
So in about 6 months' time, I built up the practice as full as I could, holding a job. And then I started to make plans to step away, and then I got pregnant. So then I went ahead and stepped away with that. That just kind of put the nail in the coffin. And then I took my maternity leave, and I built it from the part-time to full-time. And here we are. I mean, what happened was I said to Miranda, you seem to teach these things to a lot of people. What if you kind of put it into a course or something, so you're not repeating yourself all the time? And she's like, well, what if we did that together? And I blew it off for a while. And then she said, no, I'm serious. And we had only met in person, once or twice before we had formed a business. Don't recommend it, but we were very lucky. We're very, I think people hear our story. A lot of times people assume that we were best friends, and we were, she was my coach first. And then the friendship developed out of the business, and we lucked out. We coach very differently if you're going to go into partnership, but because we have seen other people and what they go through. So we're very fortunate. And then I ended up, Miranda moved, and I ended up selling my practice a few years ago and doing ZynnyMe full time, because I wanted to do this well. Like, I want to do all things, and I was not doing well riding both horses at the same time, as we say. And I felt like I could do more for my community this way too.
Wow. Well, I know one of the things that you guys are known for, and it was probably one of the, was an inspiration to me to, quite honestly, was your business boot camp and putting that together. And so I think that was one of the things that was just, I think for those of us that had stuck our toe in the water in this whole consulting practice building space, you guys really kind of set the bar for a lot of us. and getting to where we are. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's, that was such an experience too, in terms of, it was really born out of having hundreds of conversations with therapists and looking at where are people getting stuck? Where are they struggling? What would it really look like to change the dynamic for therapists in private practice and find all those sticking points? And it's one of those, again, because we both are like, we're people that over deliver and perfectionists, and we want to like really help. Every time we found a new stuck point, then how do we tweak this? How do we change it? How do we add more value into this so that if somebody comes and they're part of this community, that they're really supported through that whole process? I think that's, it's one of the things that we miss, when most of us, if we got into a good program in graduate school, there's this whole community around you that kind of like helps to kind of push and propel you forward, and you feel stuck. And so you go and talk with a faculty or your thesis chair or another person in your cohort, and you have all this support around you. And then when you get out, you're kind of like on your own. And so every time something new happens, you're kind of reinventing the wheel, or some issue pops up and you're trying to figure out how to navigate it, and making this, the same mistakes everybody needs to make. And just, it's so lovely to see people be able to avoid some of those things and to be able to focus on just doing great clinical work, ultimately, right? If I can free up someone's energy from having to, spend 20 hours making a decision and just knowing, this is the direction to go, and I have to make this small little decision between this and that as best practices and what works for me, then that's 20 hours that they get to spend on their clinical work.
Right. Right. Yeah. One of the things that we were talking about before we started recording was some of the themes that we have kind of seen through COVID. And this kind of goes back to, I know one of the things that you guys have taught me a lot, and just through your blog and other stuff that you put out there, is just around our money mindset. And that I think most of us that are in this therapist world, this therapist business, if you will, is that we have a heart for helping people. And I think one of the mindset mistakes we make is that if we charge for our services or charge what we're worth for our services, we're somehow or another not being kind to people. And so I'd love for you guys to talk about that and how you've helped other therapists kind of get over that.
Well, can I just touch on what we're worth? What are you worth, Gordon?
Yeah. What am I worth? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, people are priceless. And I feel like the work that we do as therapists, you cannot put money on that. How are you going to monetize transgenerational trauma and healing?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
So then that brings us back to, well, how do we know what to charge? And it goes back to, what do we need in order to do good work and to live the life we teach our clients?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
That money is a resource, right? That is part of the outcome that we're working towards. We're working towards an outcome with our clients, a clinical outcome. We want them to have a great experience. We want to be able to be present to provide that outcome. So we need to look at our outcome, and money is just one resource that we need to get there. Right. And it's also happens to be closely tied to time and energy. Right.
Right.
So once we kind of look at those three pieces of resource, money and time and energy, and we start to calculate, well, what does that number really come out to? Then we start to take some of the shame, or even the values stuff out of it. So for example, in boot camp, we take our clients through this process where they're working in basically a piece of software that we give them, where they answer all these questions. It's kind of one page at a time, answer questions. Okay, then they answer some more questions. They answer some more questions. And the software goes, okay, then on average, this is the fee that you need to be receiving. Wow. And they're consistently like blown away because it takes into account everything that's related to running a business, making sure that you have sick time available so that if you are sick or your child is sick, that you don't go in and see clients because, well, I have to, or I can't pay my rent, or I can't pay my mortgage, or I can't pay for my health insurance, whatever the thing is, that you can take regular vacations, that if your computer breaks, that you would be able to replace it. You know, all of the things that are part of being a business owner, that stuff is calculated. Most of us did not learn how to be business owners in graduate school. We were trained in nonprofits, and we have this nonprofit mindset. And yet what's fascinating is if you look at the grants that nonprofits get, these grants are usually for millions of dollars. And if you even looked at the fee, like the hourly wage that's earmarked towards a particular position and how much the person is paid is very different, because it has to pay for their office and their sick time and their health coverage and all of these other pieces, right? Right. So it's this other part that therapists have never been able to see. And we all need to learn that in some way, shape, or form, right?
Right, right. Yeah, I know in some of the coaching I've done is one of the places I like for people to start is to think about their lifestyle, you know, how they want to live, whatever that is. How do you want to live, and what is the amount of money it's going to take for you to maintain that? And then that's your figure you kind of work backwards from, and you can, you can work backwards from that to know what it's going to cost you to keep your office open. What are you going to, if you're a group, what are you going to pay your people? What are you going to pay yourself in order to maintain your lifestyle? All those things. And what you come up with is, okay, this is what I've got to charge per session if I want to have this many sessions or this few sessions or whatever.
Again, that comes down to what is the amount of sessions you can do and still do good work, and that everyone gets equitable care. And it's not out of I should do this, I have to do this. Instead, I think some of those things we need to look at a larger systemic perspective, maybe because of my MFT background. That's important to me. I don't know, but we often as individuals take on the responsibility of greater systems. We have become the scapegoat, that we are to fix this system. And no, you know what? The mental health care system is broken, right? Access is challenging. And we are one part of that system. And what our argument is that in order for that system to exist, to be sustainable, we all have to operate from that place of our highest and best. And that can raise the bar for these other systems maybe to change with us. Instead of us looking at our peers and saying, you charge too much. Why are you doing that? Because at the end of the day, you don't know someone else's situation. You don't know, like, Gordon, your needs may be totally different than my needs. And so I think there is guilt for having need. A lot of us feel like, lifestyle. I'm used to living paycheck to paycheck. But is that what you want for your clients? Is that what you're teaching them? Like, what does health look like for them? You're looking at them. You got to do the same for you. And then from there, we all have different privileges. Right. So we do know therapists that have full trust funds. They don't have to make a dime. So they can charge anything they want to charge. I will argue, though, that being all over the map has therapeutic implications, that you should know what you're charging so that you don't have resentment in the therapeutic relationship. But then we have other people who are single parents with kids and no other support. And so you're going to say to them, well, you shouldn't charge what you need in order to feed your children. And we can't do that. That's why we don't compare fees, because you don't know the story behind the fee. Setting a fee is all about what is my highest and best that takes care of me and takes care of the client, that win-win. Yeah. And not comparing ourselves to $1 million, multi-million-dollar budget with a nonprofit.
Right. Right. I love that, because I think so many times we get hung up on a figure, whether it's 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures, it really doesn't matter. When it comes down to it, of what sort of, what's going to work for you is what's important, and what's going to keep you, like you said, at your best.
And I mean, 6 figures in LA looks very different than 6 figures in Alabama too.
Right.
There's so much.
Oh yeah.
Wherever.
And are you talking 6 figures after expenses and after taxes, or before taxes, and all of these other pieces? I want to go back to this idea too of like comparison, because one of the places I see comparison is also, well, I can't charge that much, not just because it's more, but it's more than this other person that has more specialty or expertise than I have, or what have you, all these other places. And, the reality is the research is there that says years of experience does not, and, years of hours of training, all these other certification things, they do not directly correlate it with clinical outcomes, right? There is not a connection. And again, that person, they may be charging that because they have a spouse who is the primary breadwinner, or they have a trust, or they bought a house 30 years ago and it's paid off and they don't need to, collect a down payment, or, all these other pieces. It could be very different. And so ultimately, right, what are we charged with? We're charged with, when somebody comes into us, they trust us with their time and their energy and their hope for healing. Are we fully taking that in and going, yeah, I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up fully for this person. I'm not going to, okay, gosh, it's been a crazy week and I've already sent 30 clients, but I've got to push some more people in here because they need some people, and, I got to do it, and I got to pay the bills, and it feels really good in the bank account. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And I'm pretty sleepy, but I'll do my best. Or am I going to go no, this person, this is what they've been thinking about all week. They're investing their hard-earned money into this, and I'm going to make sure that I'm fully present. I know their name. I looked at their intake paperwork. I looked at their notes from last session, that I am fully here. And while we cannot promise what the outcomes are, I think what we need to promise and really hold ourselves accountable to as a profession, as individuals, is if what we are doing is not working, that we are going to change it until it does, or we are going to refer out. Right. This idea that, well, this person's bonded to me and they keep coming back, so something, it must be good, or the person would leave. Sometimes it's symptomatic.
Well, that's a word too.
Symptomatic. Sometimes it's symptomatic that somebody continues to come to see you when they are not making progress. And we need to be those gatekeepers to say, you know what? I care about you. Here's what you said you were really looking for. And I don't see us making progress. So what do we need to shift? Do we need to be more regular? Do we need to see each other more often? Do you need a change of something? Maybe you need to see someone else, and a different style would work for you.
Right.
It's a lot of integrity, right? All of this comes down to integrity, I think. If all your clients were in a room and shared what they paid for a session with you, would you feel good about the differences and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. It's, so, one of the things that I think, I'm hearing in this is being able to, again, it's a theme we've had a lot of over the past year, is just this whole idea of self-care, of really being able to look at, our relationship to money, which I think has a lot to do with self-care, but also just thinking about how much we're working and all of that, because I know for me, on the business side of things, our phone's ringing off the hook, and we're running out of places to put people. Yes. Nice problem to have, but we can also take on more than we are really, I don't want to use the word should, but
then what is fair for the clients and for the clinician, right?
Right.
I want to just say, I don't think this problem is going away. The pandemic has only highlighted the issues we have had as a system. And now we are seeing the cracks widen. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, we are going to be treating anxiety, depression, agoraphobia, medical trauma, all sorts of things in the next years to come. Mm-hmm. And there's something that happens with us as therapists that we feel like, I have to see this person. I'm going to overwork. And what Miranda and I have been really working with on our clients, we wrote a burnout handbook, for example, and it's like, don't replicate the things that oppress you in other systems in your own business. Mm-hmm. Because in order for you to be able to serve with longevity, you have to pull back and say, gosh, my ability, my resource is different. My mm-hmm. ability to sit with clients on Zoom is very different than my ability to sit in a room with them. My ability of how many clients I can see is very different. Now I'm homeschooling my kids. Mm-hmm. Like a lot has changed. And there's this, some idea that we don't get to change. We don't get to change our informed consent. We don't change our fee. This is what we said we do, and we're going to do it forever. Instead of saying, gosh, something has changed and I want to be here for the long haul. How mm-hmm. do I do that in a way that is sustainable? Right.
I know, Kelly, I know this was your experience as well, working in an agency setting before you went into private mm-hmm. practice. And I did as well. And it was, where I had worked before was a nonprofit organization working with at-risk children and youth. And mm-hmm. we were doing at that time a form of therapy called multi-systemic therapy, which I love that particular modality or whatever. But the demands of working in that environment and then having to meet state contracts and, mm-hmm. The paperwork and the documentation and, the utilization reviews, all of those kinds of things. And I know when I went into private practice, what you were just saying reminded me of this. I was thinking, I've got to perform at that standard. In my practice.
And part of that standard was, we're just going to give you more and more and more and more.
Yes.
Like that's just the way it is. And I mean, my clinicians had caseloads of 100. It was like, this is ridiculous.
Well, or even I worked in a nonprofit that was relatively kind, right? I saw 32 clients a week. Right. Which I look back and think, how did I do that? Right. I only took mm-hmm. breaks because when people would no show, that's how I got lunch and breaks. But that was my own doing, right? My own sense of obligation. Mm-hmm. I brought my stuff to the table. But when you get into private practice, we have to then look at, what about the bookkeeping and answering the phones and maintaining the website mm-hmm. and dealing with PPP loans or whatever the mm-hmm. things are that you have to do outside of the business. Uh-huh. I didn't have to worry about that stuff. I didn't have to sit and do anything beyond just what was happening with my clients. So in whatever setting you're in, right, if you are the business owner, you have to either budget for those things that you're outsourcing, or you have to have time for those things that you're outsourcing. Mm-hmm. And so clinicians that will come in thinking, this works great because I'm going to see 30 clients a week. And then suddenly they're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week.
Right.
And going, wait, I did not budget this appropriately. And mm-hmm. then they feel guilt or they feel like they're doing something wrong when it's right. like, yeah, you can streamline your practice for sure, but it's a business. It's going to take time.
Right. And I think that's another point you make. there, Miranda, is I think a lot of times people are too slow to outsource stuff. I know when I first went into practice and started getting busy and I was trying to do it all, where we're located, it's, it's not to go off on too far on a tangent, but really I've made the decision to be an insurance-based practice because of the demographics of our area. And I was trying to do it all, do too much of it myself, plus carry, like a higher caseload, and it's not sustainable. And again, it was leading to burnout. And finally, some wise people, maybe the ZynnyMe people, kind of planted the idea that it was a good idea to outsource, and that would be money well spent in terms of return on investment.
I think it's one of the things we talk about a lot in our fee setting webinar is how for every, if you had a caseload of 20, for every $10 that you slide, what is it, Miranda? $10,000
on average, $10,000 a year. And
here we are, like picking over. I got my credit card processing fee down by 0.1%. I did this. I'm not going to outsource that. Well, for $200, you could outsource it and actually be happier, enjoy your life, and plan it as part of your business plan and charge a fee that covers that instead of like stressing out about these like small things that are necessary in your business that are proven to, if you have a credit card processor, you're proven to have more retention and with clients. So it's just kind of funny where we focus our energy too with fear and money. And I know people are like, oh, the pandemic, now people can't afford my services. I mean, there's always going to be some reason why you can't. I just want to say that. Go ahead.
And I thought that when I started my practice during the recession, and I did not take insurance. And I remember people saying, oh my gosh, it's the recession. How can you possibly charge this fee? And honestly, I would be shocked and surprised. I remember a potential client calling me up and they said, hey, we're looking for couples therapy. We're both unemployed. I'm like, well, let me get you to a sliding scale. And they're like, no, we've already been to the clinics. Like, this is a good investment. We're living with our, their parents right now so that we can do this. We need to figure out our relationship. That's the most valuable thing that we have. We are happy to come and pay your fee. And I'm trying to convince the person, right? Like, go to this clinic, go over here, they can slide down for you. And they're saying, no, this is really valuable. And we did the work and it was very valuable. So it's this place of, we have to start to shift that mindset, right? Because divorces are up right now. Are lawyers going out and sliding all their fees for people going in and getting divorced because it's a pandemic? No. The medical needs are up. Are the doctors and nurses sliding down their hourly wage and, taking a cut in their salary? Because no, where are those places where immediately we say, okay, here's what I have to do. And ultimately, if we can take care of ourselves where we are not sitting and like setting ourselves up for poverty, then we even have room to give back. We can give back to nonprofits that are set up to do this work. We can go out and spend time doing social justice work to like push to help with the systemic work. We can hire people and pay them sustainable living wages and pull them out of positions so that you don't have 20 therapists, working really hard to get this really underpaying position. Suddenly, nonprofits and grants will see that they have to pay more in order to actually attract people if we can create the economy around what we do. But it does, we are a part of it in private practice in changing this. And again, this part that like blows my mind is people thinking that they have to go into coaching. There are people that are getting graduate degrees today who are saying, you know what I've been told is I shouldn't get licensed as a therapist because I won't get paid as well as if I just went out and did coaching. That is ridiculous. And that's crazy. There's nothing magical about the word coaching. And there's all these protections there for therapy, and therapy is magical. We have the research to prove like how great it works. The only reason that it is not people aren't paying for it, investing it, is because of us and the stuff that we're doing, that we're not putting out there and holding to our values.
Yeah.
And our contribution to that system is not lowering our fee. It is looking at the bigger thing of how do I stick around and provide great outcomes and contribute to the economy, like Miranda's saying, so that we can actually change things across the board in a more global fashion. It is not one lone practice sliding their fee all over the place that's going to do that.
Right. Yeah, I love that. It's I think one silver lining that has happened through COVID has been the fact that I think a lot of the stigma around mental health and mental well-being is starting to, that stigma is starting to lower some, because I think so many of us have experienced just anxiety on different levels through all of this.
Yeah.
And so, And so I think, I'm hopeful that, as a result of that, particularly as an insurance-based practice, that's going to up the bar, and that, need to be paying for what these services are really, really worth. And so,
I think there's also, I hope that therapists are, really looking at those numbers, and they're starting to say, you know what, this contract for this particular, there's more than enough clients out there, and there's insurance companies that are reimbursing at a viable level for my particular area. So I'm going to focus on those insurance contracts, and I'm going to say no to contracts that are paying me $25 or $35 for a session. The fact that those contracts are still out there, and that therapists are signing them, whether, sometimes they're worded in a way that is just sneaky, right? When the common ones with the APs, they will pay $99 per client that you see for up to 3 sessions, which means you get $100 flat, whether you see them once or whether you see them 3 times. And I worked with a therapist that, when I worked at the county, who was like, so they come to see me once, and then I refer them out to someone else and say nope. She's like, I can't see them for more than 1 time. I'm like, so basically she makes it so they can't use their full EAP. Because, oh, what a nasty practice, as opposed to saying no, we're not going to sign that contract. That's not okay.
Right. Yeah. I remember it was a very liberating thing when I got rid of an EAP company I was contracted with that just would not go up on their fee. And I just said, okay, I can't see any more of the people you refer to me. I'm sorry. They can. Yeah.
And
and I think sometimes therapists think there's something wrong with them, but it's the system. It is the larger players. They need to also change. So, this is about, again, integrity of knowing I don't want resentment. If I'm with a panel or an EAP and it doesn't work for me and I hate dealing with it, don't think that doesn't show up in the therapeutic work. It does.
Yeah. You're right.
And realize too that there are insurance companies, right? A lot of people don't understand that we have this insurance company that we just kind of know their name. And we think of them as this, global company or this United States based company, but those companies are broken up into little things for each state. And in some cases, they're broken up in 2 parts of the state. So for example, Kaiser, Northern California Kaiser and Southern California Kaiser are completely different corporations with totally different practices, reimbursements, everything, right?
Right.
So people will look and go, oh, this is a great insurer to work with, except they're referring $60 in Los Angeles for the same CPT code that they're referring they're paying $130 in Arkansas. Right. And you look at the cost of living and you go, wait, why is it that it's so much higher in Arkansas than here? Right. Part of the reason is because we say yes to things that just don't work. Ultimately, when they are providing insurance and saying, we're going to cover this, if somebody says, oh, that's absolutely like not doable and I won't sign that, they have to change the contracts. This isn't about price fixing, like none of that. This is just about like doing math, guys. Like we have to just do math for ourselves and figure out what works. And eventually insurance companies have to make shifts and changes just because they don't have enough people paneled to do the work. So they have to make adjustments, right? And again, we need them to make adjustments just so that it's livable wages, not just for us, but for our staff. You see people who are like, well, I couldn't live on the wage I was making as a solo practice owner doing insurance. So I made a group practice. So now I've created this dynamic where I'm making a livable wage, but I'm basically hiring people who can't make a really livable wage.
Right.
Because there's no way to make a livable wage on this scenario, right? Like what's the process?
Right.
Not everybody, but it's sort of what happens.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I know we could spend hours talking about this because I know it's something we're all passionate about, but I want to be respectful of your time. And so I know that you guys have got some new things coming up. You want to share what those are so that people can know about them?
For sure. We are going to be doing a free 4-part masterclass that is going to have 3 free CEs, APA and MBCC coming up. So if you want to check that out, go to ZynnyMe.com and you can get on our list to get first dibs to do that live masterclass with us. And we'll also send you out great resources like our free burnout handbook. If you're experiencing that burnout and struggling, like we're there for you. We've got 10 hours of training that you can just tap right into and dig into. Like this is, we are not the rock stars of the private practice world in any way, shape or form, but I think we are definitely people who we love to give out in bounty and we like to provide things for you. So if you need whatever you need in private practice, we've probably got a place for you to start. And it's probably there for free sitting on our website. Over the last, 10 years, we've amassed a lot to give out to people.
Yes. Well, and we'll be sure and have links in the show notes and show summary for all of that so people can get to it easily. Well, Kelly and Miranda, I am so thrilled to be able to spend this time with you all. And
Thank you.
Yeah, any other parting thoughts before we click the button to go?
I think it's just important to remember that your work is invaluable and that who you are as a person is unique. Mm-hmm. And that is what makes the therapy unique too. And that if you can just always hold on to that, you won't need to get caught up in this, some of this money stuff as much. And just remember that this work is important. And to me, it's a very special calling to have. And so, thanks for letting us share today.
Sure. Yeah. And as we say in the South, can I get an amen to that?
Amen.
Yeah. Yes. Well, you all, I hope we get to do it again here soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Gordon.
Thanks for being here.
It's good to see you.
Folks, I'm so glad you joined me for this episode, and I'm so glad that grateful to Kelly and Miranda for giving their time to this, and also just their advocacy work just around advocating for us in the mental health field and those of us that are out there helping others and really putting our hearts into it and just really creating a shift in the way that we think about our money and think about what we get paid and what we're worth as therapists. And I think that, what we provide is really invaluable, as I think Kelly said. And it's something that I think we need to constantly advocate for. I know that one of the great things about, not great things, but maybe a silver lining from the whole COVID crisis that we've been in is just, I think mental health and the stigma around it is starting to fade away, which I'm so thankful for. And that people are now reaching out to us as therapists and really seeking the help. Just no different than we would, if we were feeling sick, we'd go to a doctor. If we're not, if we're feeling depressed or anxious and need to talk about that, I think that is what we offer people. And so anyway, again, just many thanks to Kelly and Miranda for being with me on this particular episode. So be sure and check out today's sponsor for the podcast, TherapyNotes, TherapyNotes.com. And now that they're expanding, they have their telehealth platform that is built into the electronic health record system. They are second to none. Their support is second to none. I've had to call them before when I was trying to figure something out, and they were just so helpful to me in my practice, and I couldn't do without them. And be sure and use the coupon code or promo code Gordon, just GORDON, and you can get 2 months of their services for free just by trying them out. So again, therapynotes.com. And also be sure and check out the Google Workspace for Therapists course before the price goes up, and you can get to that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/G Suite course. And you can also check out the Session Note Helper, which is just a system that you can use within the Google Workspace environment. And it is at practiceoftherapy.com/Session Note Helper. So be sure and check those things out. Looking forward to you hearing from some of my future guests. I've been doing a lot of interviews here lately, and I've got some really great people lined up for you to hear from. So be sure and tune back in. And I guess you can say that for a podcast. There's not really any tuning, is there? But do subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it, whether it be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Amazon Music, Audible, any of those places that you get your podcasts from. Hopefully you'll be able to find us there. So be sure and do that and leave us a review. It just helps more people find us by doing that. So take care, folks, and we'll be talking with you here in the future. And thanks again for joining me. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.